The city's underworld had always thrived on shadows, on whispers in the dark, on deals that never left a trace. But when cryptocurrency took the stage, shadows weren't enough anymore. What mattered was code, anonymity, and the cold glow of screens. It was in this strange new era of wealth and secrecy that the name of the crypto killer began to surface, whispered at first like a rumor, then spreading like a digital virus through forums, darknet chat rooms, and encrypted conversations. No one knew who he was, but everyone who dealt in digital coins and illicit trades knew what he did. He hunted. His first victim was a mid-level broker, a man who had made millions overnight convincing desperate people to invest in worthless coins. They found him in his penthouse, the lights still on, his laptop open to a wallet drained of every last token. The screen displayed nothing but a single line of code, looping endlessly. Value must return to zero. The police called it a robbery, a violent one at that, but those in the crypto world knew better. They recognized the signature, the eerie logic behind the message. Whoever had done it wasn't after money. They were after balance, as if the blockchain itself demanded blood for the sins of greed. More deaths followed. A developer of a fraudulent exchange was discovered in a parking garage, his cold wallet missing and his hard drives smashed beyond recovery. An anonymous investor, who had built his empire on rug pulls and pump-and-dump schemes, was found floating in a river, his crypto accounts emptied hours before his body surfaced. Each crime bore the same strange marker. Wallets stripped clean, digital trails erased with surgical precision, and that same line of code, left somewhere obvious, taunting investigators. Value must return to zero. The authorities tried to make sense of it, but every lead dissolved like sand through fingers. Surveillance cameras malfunctioned. Logs were altered. Even timestamps on messages shifted in impossible ways, as though the killer wasn't just erasing his tracks but rewriting them. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Some claimed the crypto killer was an ex-developer, someone who had once helped build the architecture of digital money and turned against it. Others believed he was a vigilante, punishing those who twisted technology for greed. A few even whispered that he wasn't human at all, that he was an AI, a ghost in the blockchain, a self-aware algorithm eliminating corruption from within. Fear spread like wildfire in the digital community. Suddenly, those who had once boasted about their schemes began to withdraw into silence, hiding behind layers of anonymity that even they didn't trust. Wallets went dark, exchanges slowed, and new projects faltered before they could take flight. It was as though a single figure, unseen and untouchable, had declared war on the world of digital crime, and the battlefield stretched across both blood and blockchain. But there was one thing the killer hadn't anticipated: curiosity. While most fled, a handful of journalists, hackers, and detectives became obsessed with uncovering the truth. Among them was a cybercrime analyst who believed he had seen a pattern in the killer's digital footprint. It wasn't random. The wallets the killer drained weren't just from criminals. They were tied together through hidden links, old deals, and backroom trades. The victims weren't strangers. They were nodes in a network, a closed circle of corruption, and someone was unraveling it thread by thread. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became that the crypto killer was waging something more personal than a crusade. This was revenge. Each victim had once been part of a betrayal, a silent theft of an idea, a technology, or a fortune. Somewhere in the archives of lost code and abandoned startups lay the origin story, and the killer was rewriting it with blood. The analyst never revealed what he discovered, at least not publicly. His final report to the authorities was redacted beyond recognition, and within weeks he vanished, leaving behind only a locked apartment and a computer wiped clean. Some said he'd been silenced by the killer. Others believed he had joined him, or become him. What mattered was that his disappearance became just another entry in the growing legend. The crypto killer's work didn't stop. The killing slowed, but each new strike was bolder, more calculated. Entire exchanges went offline overnight, fortunes disappeared without warning, and bodies turned up with the same mocking line left behind. To this day, no one knows who he is, or even if he's still just one person. But in every encrypted corner of the internet, in every forum where traders whisper about new coins or schemes, his name lingers like a warning. Value must return to zero. The legend of the crypto killer grew with every silence that followed his strikes. It was not just the bodies, not just the empty wallets, but the way entire rooms would hush when his name was spoken. For the men and women who had carved empires out of deception, his shadow became a constant companion. They woke at night to the sound of their own laptops whirring, half expecting to see that single mocking line of code staring back at them. In the underground clubs where deals were made in whispers, people spoke of him as if he were a phantom. No one had ever seen him. No one had ever heard his voice. And yet, his presence was undeniable, felt in the cracks of every broken scheme. Some swore he had to be ex-military, a mercenary who had learned the art of killing before turning to code. Others believed he had once been one of them, betrayed and left penniless, rising from the ashes of ruin to exact his justice in the only language they understood, money and fear. Then there was the story that unsettled even the hardest criminals, the one they never told in full. A traitor in Berlin had been marked for death, his wallet emptied, his screen lit with the familiar words, but he survived. He had been sitting at his desk, deep in code, when the attack came. His systems crashed one by one, his passwords shredded, his coins ripped away in seconds. And then his camera light flicked on. He swore he saw someone watching him through the lens, a figure cloaked in darkness, face hidden, eyes glowing faintly with the light of the screen. The camera shut off a moment later, leaving him paralyzed with terror. He disappeared the next morning, his flat abandoned, his accounts closed. No one knew if he had run, or if the crypto killer had simply come back to finish the job. By now, the killings weren't just crimes. They had become myth, folklore of the digital age. Young hackers told the stories like ghost tales to scare each other, while seasoned criminals treated them as warnings etched in blood. Some quit the game entirely, cashing out and retreating to anonymity in remote places. But the greedy ones, the arrogant ones, they stayed, telling themselves they were untouchable. They, too, eventually vanished, leaving nothing behind but empty chairs and drained wallets. The police, desperate for answers, turned to anyone with knowledge of the darknet. They raided hacker forums, traced ghost wallets, interrogated programmers. But every clue they touched turned to smoke. It was as though the killer knew they were coming before they even moved. Files deleted themselves before agents could read them. Servers burned out the instant they were seized. Witnesses who spoke too much went missing. The more they hunted, the deeper they fell into his game, until they realized they weren't chasing him at all. He was leading them. Still, some patterns began to emerge. The murders and hacks formed a trail, like a path carved across the globe. Each victim, each theft, was part of a web. Hidden behind the strings of code and the blood-stained headlines was a name, a single startup from years ago. It had been one of the first to design a secure blockchain system, promising transparency and fairness. But the company collapsed overnight. Its code was stolen, its creators ruined, and those who betrayed it went on to build fortunes on its ashes. The victims of the crypto killer were not random after all. They were the architects of that betrayal. And so, the whispers shifted. No longer was he just a phantom or an avenger.
He was one of them.
He had been there at the beginning, standing in the ruins when the dream was shattered. He had waited years, biding his time, letting them grow fat on stolen wealth before cutting them down one by one. But if that was true, then the story was far from over. Because not everyone who had taken part in that betrayal had been found dead. Some were still out there, hiding, always looking over their shoulders, watching their screens flicker at night, waiting for the day when the code would come for them. And when it did, they knew it would not matter where they were, how much they had, or how many walls they built around themselves. The crypto killer would find them. The killings no longer felt random. They became a countdown, a ledger being cleared with ruthless precision. Each time another body turned up, those who followed the legend of the crypto killer noticed how carefully the pattern unfolded. He wasn't killing for greed or impulse. He was erasing a history, one transaction at a time. The survivors of that old betrayal, the men and women who had stolen the original code from the forgotten startup, knew they were being hunted. Many of them had retreated into silence, abandoning the public eye, wiping their names from every record they could find. They hired private security, lived behind walls of encrypted servers, and paid fortunes to mercenaries who swore they could track anyone. Yet no matter how far they ran, no matter how well they hid, the killer always arrived. There was the tycoon in Singapore, who built an empire out of stolen algorithms. He vanished from his luxury apartment without a single broken lock, his body later discovered inside a server farm, surrounded by machines still humming with power. On his screen was a blockchain explorer, showing his accounts drained in real time, every coin flowing into a single cold wallet. The wallet had only one note attached to it: justice's balance. Then there was the hacker in Los Angeles, one of the earliest backstabbers in the chain. He thought himself clever, living off-grid in a compound, cut off from the networks he once ruled. But when they found him, his bunker's walls were lined with strange graffiti, binary code painted in red, scrawled by his own hand in some desperate frenzy. Each string translated into the same phrase: 0 is the beginning. His death was ruled a suicide, but no one believed it. By now, whispers had begun to escape the darknet and spill into the open world. Reporters speculated about a digital vigilante. Politicians warned of cyberterrorism. Conspiracy theorists claimed the killer was funded by governments, or worse, by the very corporations that secretly controlled the flow of cryptocurrency. But none of the explanations satisfied the unease in the air. The truth felt bigger, darker, something no one wanted to face directly. Even the markets began to tremble. Coins crashed without warning, traders pulled their funds out of exchanges, and small-time investors panicked at the thought that any fortune made dishonestly could vanish overnight. It was as though the crypto killer wasn't just murdering people, he was murdering faith in the system itself. And still, he was nowhere to be found. His movements were as invisible as the wind, his strikes unpredictable. No camera ever caught him, no server ever held his trace for more than seconds. It was as if the killer lived inside the code, not outside of it. More and more people began to believe he wasn't a man at all, but an entity, a ghost birthed from betrayal, roaming the blockchain, balancing the scales in a way flesh and blood never could. Yet, there were those who swore he was real. A detective in London claimed she once intercepted a private message, one that should never have reached her. It appeared on her encrypted line late at night, and signed untraceable. It read, "They will all pay. The chain cannot be corrupted forever." She resigned weeks later, and when pressed, refused to speak of it again. Somewhere, the survivors of the betrayal still lived, growing fewer each year, bound together by fear of the figure who hunted them. They had the money, the power, the resources to build walls of steel and code, but it was never enough. The crypto killer had no need for doors or keys. He moved where numbers moved, struck where greed lived, and erased all he touched. And though no one could say when he would appear again, every criminal in the digital world knew that someday, inevitably, their number would come up. Their wallets would drain, their screens would flicker, and those words would return, cold and merciless. Value must return to 0.